This is my cat, Thor. He's always around when I'm reading, and in general, he is quite clingy. And this week, he's gonna be choosing the books I read. For Thor to choose, I put a treat on top of the book, and whichever treat he ate first is the book that I will be reading.
The first books Thor will be choosing from is How to End a Love Story and Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I'm honestly really excited for both of these books, but he was having some trouble choosing and was kind of confused about where the treats were, and he just kept coming to me thinking I had the treats. I was pointing him towards the general direction of the books because I didn't want to influence which one he chose, but it took him a while to figure out what's going on.
I just want to read a book. Oh, good boy. Oh, okay. So that's what we're reading. Good job. You picked one. You can have the other one too. Come here. No, here. Here. No, it's right there. Good boy.
The first book we will be reading is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies.
Thor was just trying his best. And I think he thought I had the treat in my hand, but it was on the books. And I didn't want to point at the books and then like sway him one way or the other. Eventually he figured it out. And the first book we will be reading is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I'm so excited to get to this book. All I know is that Emily Wilde is a researcher and her specialty is fairies. So I'm excited for this. I'm hoping for academic vibes. I love a researcher, especially a magical one. So it should be fun. Let's get into it. So I am 90 pages into Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I'm having a really good time reading it so far. We are learning the landscape, and she is a very, very unique main character. She is kind of I'd say socially awkward, but she just doesn't necessarily take to the normal pleasantries that occur in the social world. She's very much all business. She's in this small town. I think it may be in Norway, and winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
And she is there to study the folk or the fairies that reside there because she is a researcher at Cambridge. So she definitely has that kind of typical academic professor vibe. She is very intriguing. There are some intriguing side characters as well. I thought this book from the cover would be really like whimsical and magical, but I think it's a little darker than I expected because of the actions of some of the fairies and just their descriptions, honestly. It's not as lighthearted as I anticipated. But overall, I'm enjoying it. I didn't realize how short it was either. It's only about 300 pages, so hopefully I get through it quick. I just finished Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and I did actually take a while to read this book, but I really enjoyed it. It was very different from a lot of other fantasy books I've read. It was kind of like a journal of the scholar Emily Wilde and her going on this field mission to complete her encyclopedia of fairies. And so she has gone out all over the world and has studied fairies, and now this is kind of the last species that she has to study to complete her book. The journey that she took on was really good. I really liked the change we saw in her. She's kind of quirky, socially awkward, isn't sure how to handle emotions, but is extremely smart. And I loved all the side characters. I feel like now is the perfect time to read this leading up to winter. Like I said, the cover gives very whimsical, magical vibes, and that definitely was a thing, but it takes place in the winter. It kind of reminded me of Frozen when reading, and I really enjoyed that setting. I really don't have a lot of complaints about this book. I gave it 4 stars. I'm excited to read the next book too. I really loved how this ended. Like, I feel like it was perfect. The epilogue was confusing, but I feel like it'll make sense in the next books. But yeah, overall, it was super fun too to like learn about this world's fairies and see things through her point of view, because it was a journal, and like how that was written, I feel like we're like in her mind and how she sees things, and that was very enjoyable to read about. Would recommend. It's only like a little over 300 pages, but I wouldn't say this is like a fast read. It was definitely slower, and that was enjoyable. There were a lot of big things happening, but it never felt rushed. Sometimes it's like, oh, I need to keep reading to find out. I need to keep reading to find out. This wasn't necessarily like that for me, but it was still a really good time reading to like take my time and really get to know the characters and the world. That was a really nice experience and kind of change of pace from a lot of books I read.
For the second round, I was in the mood for a romance, so I put back up How to End a Love Story, and then also Lost and Lassoed, which is the new Rebel Blue Ranch novel by Lila Sage. Thor was still a little confused this time, but he was able to be a bit quicker at finding the treats on the book, and our next book we will be reading is Lost and Lassoed. I'm really excited for this new release, and Thor gets another treat. Thank you for choosing our next read. There's not any more treats on there. So as you saw, Thor picked our next read, and that is Lost and Lassoed. This just came out. I'm so excited. It's the 3rd book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, and I have been eating up the small town cowboy romances recently. I was looking forward to reading How to End a Love Story, but he keeps not picking that, so it's a sign it's not meant to be. We're reading Lost and Lassoed. Right from the get-go, starting off strong. The book's only 300 pages though, so it kind of has to, right from the get-go. Hello, so I finished Lost and Lassoed. I'm not sure what to rate this book. It didn't make me really feel anything, and I was just reading for the sake of reading. I don't know, I wasn't like rooting for them. I'm happy how it ended, you know, but I feel like I didn't really care, if that makes sense. Kind of sad. I think I'm gonna land around a 3 stars because I don't think it was a bad book. I don't think it was bad. I just didn't really connect. I mean, it's hard in like a 300-page book to really develop things and get a depth of feeling, but with the other books, I really enjoyed the other books. I think the first one I enjoyed the most. I'm not sure what I rated them. Let me check. The first one, 4.5 stars, and the second one, 4 stars. So yeah, I don't know. You can probably tell I'm kind of sad, but it's gonna have all the things that every single other small town romance has. The community aspect, the ranch, the nature, the family dynamics, all of that. It also had an interesting best friend relationship subplot woven throughout, and there was a little bit of turmoil and life genuinely
in that. That was interesting to read about. And like the daughter was cute. I don't know, I just didn't really feel anything for them, and that's okay, I guess. Settling on a 3 for this one. Thor has one more book to choose before this video ends. He's gonna be choosing between Real Americans and Intermezzo. Intermezzo just came out, but I think this also just came out, yeah, in 2024. I'm not exactly sure what month, but I've been on the wait list for this book at my library for like months and months and months. So I'm excited to finally have it and hopefully read it before I have to return it. I'm also really excited for this book. I'm just in the mood, I think, for a more thoughtful book and less of what I have been reading, which is a lot of small town romances, a lot of fantasy. So I'm excited to switch up the pace a little bit, and we'll see what one Thor has to choose. Oh, this book, I'm pretty sure they're Irish. I know it's like a relationship between 2 brothers. This will be my first Sally Rooney book if Thor chooses it. He's currently taking a nap under my bed, but he's gonna hear me rustling with the treats, and that's definitely gonna wake him up. Okay, you gotta stay out here while I put the treats on there, okay? Just wait.
Thor had the drill down for this 3rd pick and immediately went to Good Americans. I was potentially worried about a size bias, with one book being a paperback and a little bit smaller and the other book being a hardback, but you know, there might have potentially been a bias in Thor. I haven't tested him if he has a hardback or paperback bias. Anyways, I'm kind of worried that now anytime I read, he will expect a treat.
Thor has spoken. He thinks there's more treats on the books. Like, he keeps smelling them now. I feel bad. Our next read is Real Americans, and honestly, I didn't have a preference one or the other. I was really curious about both, so I don't like reading these because sometimes it's spoiling, but okay. Real American begins in New York City on the precipice of Y2K when 22-year-old Lily Chen, an unpaid intern at a slick media company, meets Matthew. Matthew is everything she's not: poised, confident, and most notably, heir to a vast pharmaceutical fortune. In immersive, moving prose, Rachel Kong weaves a profound tale of class and striving, race and visibility, and family and inheritance, a story of trust, forgiveness, and finally coming home. Exuberant and explosive, grand and entertaining, Real Americans is an inquiry into the forces that roil our new country. Are we destined or made? And if the latter, who gets to do the making? I wonder if he smells the treats. Keep sniffing this. Hello, I'm clearly not in my bedroom anymore. I'm in New York City, which you'll see more of in future videos, but I want to update. I made it to page 107 in Real Americans, so I'm a little over a quarter of the way done, and this book had me, I was reading it on the plane and I was getting really sad because it's very melancholy. How it's written in our main character's point of view right now is, in the character's life, time passes but they're not living even though stuff happens. Like, that's just what it feels like reading it from her perspective. It's kind of sad. It has lots of themes of, in the beginning, some self-fulfilling prophecy. There's lots of themes of racism and self-worth and being the child of immigrant parents in the United States and privilege. It's intense is what I'm saying, but it's a nice change of pace from what I have been reading, so I'm excited to keep reading it here. I'm not sure how much reading I'll get done today, but yeah, it's a lot to digest, so I'm kind of excited to be reading it slower. Thor picked a good one. So I went to a matcha shop this morning and read my book a little bit. I'm pretty far. I think I'm 5 chapters into part 2, and part 2 is the son of who part 1 was about. So we're kind of seeing his perspective on things, and he is 16 years old now, so big time jump. What is kind of surprising is he seems very mature for a 16-year-old. Then there's also things that make sense, what's concerning him about being 16. So those are initial thoughts on that. I'm really curious. I saw part 3 Lily was the mom of who part 1 was about. So Lily is who part 1 was about, Nick is who part 2 is about, which Nick is Lily's son, and then May, I think it is who part 3 is about, and May is Lily's mom, and May was the one who immigrated over, and Lily is the child of immigrants born and raised in America, and she kind of had an interesting upbringing with that, which was cool to hear about. But the way part 1 ended, I was like, I'm really excited to read May's part, which is Lily's mom. It's getting really good. It took me a while to get into it, again, just because I haven't read like a general fiction book in such a long time, but I'm really enjoying it. And it's interesting to be in perspectives of characters who have lived such different lives from me. Like, I am a white woman. I can kind of relate to like the female aspect of the main character, but I can't relate to, again, being the child of immigrant parents, like how that must feel for people. Being biracial like the son is. It's super refreshing to be able to read characters who have different experiences and perspectives than I do. I'm back home now, and I finished Real Americans this morning. This book, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just so good. It made me think a lot. It was very philosophical. It had themes of racism, privilege, poverty, and it kind of asks the question of what is up to chance in our lives and what is already chosen for us based on what we're born into, what we look like, our genetics. There was an interesting like science fiction element in there which was about genetics, and I just kept thinking, I'm like, with my biology background, I'm like, well, what about this, and this? And I'm like, well, they don't talk about splicing. What about all the different stages of the cell? Like, it's fiction. I need to not do that. It was really good. I loved these characters too. It was very interesting to be in their perspectives and then jump from one perspective to another. First perspective is the mom, the second perspective is the son, and then the third perspective is the grandmother. Yeah, it was overall really good. I think I'm gonna give it a 5 stars. I also am like thinking back on other books that I've read, mostly in September. I'm thinking about The Woman and Red Rising, and I'm like, this is kind of how I felt when I was reading those books. I'm like, honestly, those books should probably get 5 stars too. But I digress. I really grew to love these characters and just felt for them and their thought processes. And then I loved too, again, that we got all of the characters' perspectives, because then it added something that you didn't get from the previous characters that you read about. So like, for example, when we were in the mom's perspective, it was really easy to have certain feelings towards the grandma because you're in that character's perspective. But then when you get to the grandma's perspective, it's like, no, I can still have empathy and compassion for this character, even if they maybe did some not good things and hurt people, or her daughter's view of her isn't necessarily right. It's just how her daughter feels, which isn't right or wrong. It just is. Again, very philosophical. So that's why I'm giving this kind of strange review, but I would really recommend this book. I loved it. It also posed the question of like time. What would you do if you had more time? I'm gonna be thinking about this book, and I feel like it altered my perspective of some things and reaffirmed my perspective of other things. And I just love when books can do that. Wow. I'm so happy. It's from my library, and I'm like, I really want to buy this book, but it's a hardback. And those are expensive, and I don't really like hardbacks on my shelves, but you know, it's okay. It was so good. Thor picked a good one. I say like books find you at certain times, and this book definitely found me in the right time. Some of this book takes place in Manhattan, where there's such a big wealth gap. A lot of it takes place in Manhattan or New York. Being there myself and seeing how much of a wealth gap there is, which when I had traveled there last time, I didn't necessarily see that as much because I was younger and not really paying attention to that and didn't know what I do now and have the experiences that I have now. This book definitely found me at the right time, and I'm very thankful for it. Would 100% recommend this book. It was extremely profound and thought-provoking, like I've said, and yeah, give it a try, please. This is me begging you to read this book so we can talk about it. That is actually the last book we will be reading for this video. I feel like Thor did a great job of picking the books for me, and I enjoyed all of them. I was a little bit disappointed by Done and Dusted, or I keep calling it Done and Dusted, Swift and Saddled. No, that's the second one. Lost and Lassoed. There we go. Was a little bit disappointed by that, but overall happy I read it, and I'm excited for the next one in the series. As always, if you've read any of these books in this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss a video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!